Thank you for coming to the YouTube channel. I hope that you will continue to visit the website, dismantlecapitalismglobally.com. That is dismantlecapitalismglobally.com. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, please put it in the feed, or you can always email me on the email address that's on the website. I continue my journey of bringing more awareness to the system of capitalism because capitalism has many branches, as I've said. It's like a tree with many, many branches. A lot of people think that it's about a 9 to 5 job and everything that surrounds that, but capitalism does more than just that. It is the venture capitalist agenda to dominate resources wherever he or she goes. And that means capitalism is saturated in the global world because that agenda has been going on for so long through many different definitions, like I've discussed colonialism, that being a very big part of the implementation of capitalism in the culture of people like, African Americans and people of African descent, whereas that culture's dynamic is more of a socialist dynamic because they tend to be more communal in the same way that Asians tend to operate more in group economics. They too would benefit from a socialist definition. So capitalism has been the system because it has been forced into the lives of people by a dominant group, by a dominant culture. And we know the venture capitalism that we have now is from Europe. The reason I can say that with confidence is because we now have the work of Karl Marx. And Karl Marx was describing capitalism and its ills, its problems. And where was Karl Marx? Karl Marx was in Europe, describing this to us, of course. And we have to look at things in context, right? Cultural context. More than ever before, we have to look at how these different cultures on Earth are operating. And are they operating in their own definitions, or are we operating through other people's dominant culture ideas? And once you analyze that, when you take that apart and look and examine different cultures and their ways and how they came to interact with other cultures, you're gonna create a whole new. You're gonna open up Pandora's box because you're going to see why you have so many opposing viewpoints. Why you have Europeans who tend to be very much into capitalism, whereas you see people from the African continent just failing to put capitalism in place in an effective way, in a way that is helping all of African people. So it makes you question, if this system of capitalism is right for a continent like Africa, if it's right for a continent like Asia, and who is responsible for that idea. All of that has to come under analysis, and I'm always encouraging you to to not just look at things in a tunnel vision way, to not just look at these complex systems in a linear kind of way, but to always look at history and how they came to be. So today I kind of want to talk about capitalism in the context of socialism and communism. We know that socialism and communism are alternatives to capitalism. And the reason they are is because, the venture capitalists, in his, mainly his work to saturate capital in different parts of the world, he, of course, wanted or was willing to create wars to avoid socialism from happening and communism from happening. And that's why we have the Cuban Revolution and the friction that has come about because of the United States and Cuba. The United States being a heavily venture capitalist operation type country, and Europe as well. And whereas the former colonies of Europe and then the United States tend to be more of have a socialist conclusion. They want to help their people, all of their people, not just use capitalism. And the reason why they have this conclusion is because they have analyzed what the venture capitalists does, and the violence that the venture capitalist uses to inflict pain on others to get access to resources. That's the venture capitalist in a nutshell, of course. So, you have countries like Cuba, Iran, some of the Latin American countries have tried to, stand clear of capitalism. And this is based on experience, this is based on history. It is not because these countries, Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, hate the United States or Europe. Is because of of interaction, a historical interaction caused Cuba, Venezuela, Iran to have a different angle, and they should have the right to have that angle. When you think of sovereignty, right? Countries are supposed to respect the sovereignty of others. That's the only way we're going to have positive dialogue and effective dialogue with one another without we blasting one another with nuclear weapons. The problem is that we don't have that. We still have the United States wanting to govern the livelihoods of Europe's former colonies. You still have the United States meddling in other countries' affairs, and of course that is creating problems between the United States and other countries. So that's why we have these ongoing conflicts. That's why we have so many problems in this world, is because you have people disrespecting borders, you have people disrespecting resources, and of course, what do you think is going to happen? Somebody is going to revolt. Revolution is, as you know, is a reality, and the reason why we have a United States, as we know, is because of a revolution. So, again, different dynamics, different history. You have to put all of that into consideration. When you're analyzing these issues that we have inherited in this 21st century world. Communism, again, the venture capitalists from Europe and the United States hate communism, and it's to the point where we've had the Vietnam War, we've had wars in the United States entering into the island of Grenada, because those former colonies did not want capitalism. They wanted something different. Even here in the United States, the Black Panther Party, they did not embrace capitalism because, of course, capitalism was the reason behind slavery. It was the reason behind the strategic marginalization of African people. So, of course, as a descendant of slaves, you're not wanting to embrace the same system that your oppressor used against your ancestors. It's a logical angle to have, but of course, in the eyes of the venture capitalists, you're going to have to do as I tell you to do, and that's why, again, these issues that we have in this current world are due to the venture capitalists just using violence, continuing on in the legacy of violence to try and make sure that countries that they feel need to be governed. The venture capitalists continue to have a stronghold on those countries, and again, that's why we are having so many countries who are, battling, they are in friction with one another. Is because somebody's trying to oppress somebody, or somebody's carrying on the legacy of oppression, like the United States is doing, like Europe is doing when the United States brings it on into its wars. So socialism and communism, as well as capitalism, should be analyzed side by side. We tend to think that a lot of people to this day think that capitalism is the best system and it's the most viable. But look at all the problems that capitalism has brought. Currently, just look at how inflation, job insecurity, if the system is as solid as you're saying it is, then why is it that we have not secured prosperity for people? Why is it that Half of the world still lives on like $1.75. I think it's at this point a day. You still have slums in these countries. So if it's the best system, why are all these problems present, right? So that is the kind of a scrutiny that you and me have to be open to looking at, because as I've said before, we are the ones who will mobilize to change things, because the venture capitalist who is in power as we speak is not interested in the humanitarian needs. The venture capitalist is not interested in changing the structure, because he and she are benefiting from the structure. It's we, the consumer, the workers, we're the ones who are facing the uncertainty, and we are the ones who will ultimately continue to fall. We will endure the financial burden of capitalism, because we continue to, in a sense, support it. We are continuing to be part of it with minimal revolts, with minimal analysis of it. And you just have to, again, put these isms side by side in categories to really, and be objective about it. Not to say that, oh, I'm not a communist and I'm not embracing communism, or I'm not a socialist and I'm not embracing socialism. I mean, socialism is already in our system. Socialism is here. Social security, welfare system, safety nets overall are considered socialist ideas, because they came from the work of people who saw the venture capitalists being the harshest, most violent person in the universe. And those people came up with remedies like, soup kitchens during the Industrial Revolution. You had the abolitionists who were against slavery and were doing things to, help slaves escape. Those are call to action type of examples. And those can be considered socialist ideas, because those ideas were helping people in their most vulnerable status. And the reason that they were in a vulnerable status is because the venture capitalists was doing something, was finding a way to oppress people to get the most out of them, so that he and she can benefit, in terms of gaining more power, or getting access to profits, getting more access to land, resources, and so forth. But socialism is in the system. It's always confusing that people don't understand that we are already there. A lot of people who continue to want socialism or continue to fight for it is because they want to. They don't want 10 items on a store shelf. They feel like we should only have things that we need. We should only produce what we need. And again, it's a legitimate angle. Socialism is here. It has helped a lot of people in terms of safety nets, and we definitely need that against a capitalist system that is just raging on in the most violent and narcissistic way. One of the reasons why Karl Marx was against socialism, because the idea was fluctuating around his time. Of course, it's because socialism is still attached to capitalism. You still need capitalism to operate with socialism. You're just doing it on a need basis in socialism, and that's the socialist way of correcting capitalism. Is we don't need 20 products, we just need 10. Blah blah blah. But Karl Marx was like, no, we don't care about socialism or capitalism. We want dismantlement of capitalism, and that's why you have hard communists. The Fidel Castros, the Che Guevara, many of the former African countries who were part of Europe's colonization would take more of a stance on communism and socialism, because again, that relationship with the venture capitalists is something that they do not want any part of. And of course, we've had the assassination of great African leaders like Thomas Sankara, Patrick Lumumba, because those people and those people like them wanted a different system. They were more gearing towards socialism and communism. And the venture capitalists did not want you to have your way. The venture capitalist always wants to be in your life. The venture capitalists always want a presence in your life. And you better not choose socialism or communism in the eyes of the venture capitalist, because he or she's going to come after you. And that's what we've seen throughout history, is the venture capitalists just invading, rummaging through resources, to people's lives, to secure, again, property, to have power to themselves. And that's why, the European countries, even though they're no longer enslaving the former colonies, they still see them as protectorates. Europe still views, the colonies in Africa, in the Caribbean, and even South America as, as theirs. When you look up these countries, you'll see it says it's a British protectorate, or belongs to the British. The U.S. Virgin Islands belongs to the United States, and it was sold from the Danish government to the United States. So colonialism has not left us. The venture capitalist is still lurking around. And that's why when Vietnam was attempting to implement communism, the war that ensued was because the venture capitalist was still lurking, was still, around, making sure that his idea was the dominant idea. That his culture was the dominant culture, even though we're looking at a different country, a different continent. We still had those European countries wanting to dominate and to saturate other people's boundaries, to implement and to make sure that capitalism was the system for everybody. So this is just a visual of how the capitalist works. And not just in country to country, but in the interrelationships between people. They want to govern your life. They will govern your life, and that's why we still stuck in a landlord relationship. We're still stuck in a finance relationship with mortgages and so forth. It's because the venture capitalist has extended his and her powers to make sure that from the day you're born to the day that you die, you are part of their relationship. You're not. They don't let you go. You have to pay them for your entire existence. So always remember, again, this stuff is deep. Capitalism is deep. It is not to be looked at with just a simple linear, tunnel visional. Again, I'm repeating these words. Kind of angle. It needs to be looked at with the layers, because it has history, right? It has many components, and you have to look at that history. You have to look beyond that subjective way that so many people look at capitalism through the lens of 9-to-5 job and a 5 to 9, because that's what the reality is for so many of us. Like, we will need to be working those two jobs, and if we don't stop this, our children will inherit that. And we have to draw a line. I am a firm believer that this is the moment where we draw the line. In this 21st century world, with all the information we have, the line needs to be drawn. Especially everything that we are witnessing now and experiencing now. That's enough. I feel like that's enough evidence, enough base for us to say enough is enough. Like, how much longer can the venture capitalist continue to just operate in the midst of atrocities with his idea of capitalism? Like, how many more rich people do we need against the many more poor people that we have? I hope that you will put all that into perspective. I hope that you will open your mind to everything that is happening in the world, to not just close your mind because of individualism. Thank you for watching. I hope to have you again in my audience.